Good morning, Unitarian Universalist Society of San Francisco. We gather this morning surrounded here on our chancel once again by the faces of the children who have died in detention camps at the hands of our government. Whatever the subject of this morning's message, we keep their faces before us. We hold fast to our commitment to be witnesses to the ending of these young lives. The opening words are lines from the poet Donald Hall, who died last year at the age of 90. He wrote this poem when he was a mere 74. To grow old is to lose everything. Let us stifle under mud at the pond's edge and affirm that it is fitting and delicious to lose everything. Please rise now as you are able in body or in spirit, and sing together hymn number 83, Winds Be Still.
have some gratitude to express. Nathan, will you come up? I know I saw him. There he is. This is Nathan's last Sunday on staff with our church.
Come on. So you stand here. So Nathan's time with us would have been 3 years in September. He started out at the front desk and mastered that in good time and saw the need to reorder our membership database. Jumped right into that. And then there was a need for a new map of the center. And using his training in architecture, he did a beautiful one. Seeing our problem with bulletin board drift, he created a gorgeous, clear, and orderly place for our working groups, committees, and ministries to share upcoming projects. Nathan organized and orchestrated our Get Involved Sundays, and most recently has been leading the effort and working with lay leaders to review how we use our space and to suggest policies for the building so that what we do in and with the center reflects our values and also helps the center be financially sustainable.
But that isn't all. Nathan gets mission. He's also the person who would let in our homeless neighbors and find them food or make them a cup of coffee, who let folks know if he saw people treating others in ways that did not respect their worth and dignity, who got everything from the biggest, deepest picture to the thorny details that could be weeded out so that we could do more ministry and do it better and more easily. Nathan, we will miss you.
So Nathan, you started out as a parishioner, a newcomer to the city, coming here to worship, and everyone hopes that you will be back with us in that role. And we wish you all the biggest blessings in your next adventure, wherever you choose to set your compass. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
And now, please join me in saying the words of our chalice lighting, which are printed in your order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we are gathering together. Each Sunday, we take a moment to greet one another. Please reach out to someone you don't already know and introduce yourself. There will be a musical cue when it is time to be seated.
Now that you've just sat down, if you would like to rise in body or spirit for our covenant. And let us proclaim this together. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
There is human suffering all over this world, in wars declared and undeclared, or in the course of natural and human catastrophes. We ring a gong today in remembrance of one such place of suffering, to remind us of the obligation to know what is being done in our name as a nation, and to remind us of our obligation to protect the vulnerable. In honor of those children who have lost their lives this year in federal custody at detainment camps, we will ring our gong 7 times. We remember also those adults who have lost their lives in these camps. We remember the children and adults who have died trying to cross into America, and all those whose economic distress or conditions of violence at home tempt them to do the same. We remember the 70,000 adults currently in ICE or Customs and Border Control camps, and the 11,000 children separated from their families and in detention camps. May we keep all of these human beings and loved ones in our thoughts and prayers. In the week ahead, may we commit to ease the tide of human suffering, howsoever we can. As the last vibrations of the gong fade in the air, I invite us into a time of shared and sacred silence. Spirit of life and love, Spirit of justice and mercy, Spirit of the storm and of the calm, awaken in us a useful anger, and grace us with a heart that is quiet, so we can listen and know what is ours to do. May we learn the necessary gentleness to ease suffering, to relieve sorrow, may hope grow in our hearts and in the hearts of all who grieve.
I was the kind of kid that hung around with adults more than with peers. In primary school, I would stay after class to help teachers. In high school, I would run and work out with the coaches, chatting as we jogged together. At family gatherings, I would often find myself sitting around the table with my aunts and uncles and just listening. Fast forward some years when I meet Kay Jorgensen, 30 years my senior. I was 36 when we founded Faithful Fools, and Kay was 66. I would often reflect on the universe's ingenuity of this age span, the extreme differences of our life experiences, together with my younger energy and her more seasoned wisdom of life, were a great gift that wove the foundation of the work we did together. In the early days of the Fools, I would find myself sitting in circles of people who were musicians and artists, ministers, social workers, playwriters, professors, lawyers, dancers, clowns, all about 20 or 30 years older than me, and all activists in their own right, many from this congregation. We would gather together and imagine ways to work together for this better world and more just society we so often speak of. Though once again it seemed I was the kid in the room, I felt privileged to be learning and having my view of the world and life itself be enlarged by the creative and wise people I was sitting with. Beyond being inspired by the fullness of commitment and creative energy of the people around me, I was inspired by the life they moved with. I had an opportunity to also hear conversations and comments about what people were experiencing as their lives and years evolved. Many would speak of some of the more familiar experiences that come as years seem to pass so quickly. Some felt acutely the shift of their energy, their minds feeling less sharp. Some were grappling with physical ailments that became more constant companions. Some were a bit disillusioned by the ideas they had about where they would be at this age, more financially and/or self-secure. I would hear some speak of how they didn't recognize the face they saw when they looked in the mirror. It was incongruous with the experience they had of their inner self. Though many in the circle were of similar ages and shared some similar experiences that come with aging, each was unique in how they approached the evolution of being in a finite body and living with infinite variables. I was seeing what the Buddhist wisdom tells us. Suffering comes with how we are relating to something. I began to see that aging and one's relationship to it was shaped by personality, life experiences, feelings of gratitude and fulfillment, or the complex and ever-chasing thoughts of not feeling satisfied or seen or loved or accomplished, and life seemed to be running out. I know that as I spent time with these elders, I wondered, how would I be? How will I relate to growing older? Will I grieve the losses of abilities that once just seemed to be automatic? Will I even reach the age of 66 or 75 or 80? None of this do I really have answers to. I already notice when I look in the mirror, I see arriving the face of my dad's eldest sister, Aunt Barb, or my grandmother's face, Grandma Katie. But I don't find that I'm frightened, but rather still curious about what each new year will bring. I find my attention more on the desire to live with meaning, to keep on learning, and to live with the wise attitude Kay shared with me before she died. Just meet each thing as it comes.
It's good to be together, and laughter and in tears through our different ages and stages in multi-generational community, and we are the ones who make it happen. In a moment, the plates will pass, and you're invited to contribute to build this community. The morning offerings will now be gratefully received. Probably all heard retirement speeches where the wise elder is imparting welcome or unwelcome advice to the younger assembled colleagues. Well, this is the Angels retirement speech. It's a poem by Annie Farnsworth. My advice to those of you just starting out: don't expect too much or to make a big splash. They're all so jaded now. What with all this technology? Not like the old days, when all you had to do was throw your voice on the wind, cry tears through a statue, maybe just appear in times of great stress looking your most diaphanous. No, they've got their own miracles like cell phones and videos. Who needs a visitation when they've got their own apparitions appearing and disappearing all night on extended basic cable? With advances like that, a voice from heaven is not all that impressive, nor the sight of winged creatures hovering in a golden shaft of light. I guess I would say just stick to the basics, the stuff that always works, like birthing babies, and healing the folks the doctors thought hopeless. Maybe pull the stalled car off the train tracks at the very last second. When things look grim, give them the old Jesus face in a potato chip. Or maybe a squirrel's nest that becomes at dusk the spitting image of St. Francis in profile. It might sometimes feel like a thankless job, but when you do it right, just watch them pack up for a road trip pilgrimage with their picnic baskets and Instamatics. Watch their eyes widened in innocence again to see the Mary Magdalene in a cloud formation, or the Inquirer's Moses zucchini. That was some amazing grace. Thank you, Mark Kapner. Hey, Mark, you have an important anniversary coming up. 50 years ago, next month, Mark appeared at Woodstock with Country Joe and the Fish. Right? Right? Woo! And it's an amazing grace that you are here today, because today I have a few things to say about us, about the baby boomer generation. Actually, it seems increasingly foolish to call us baby anything, right? And I'm guessing that Mark and I are not the only ones in the room here today. Yes, boomers? Oh, yeah. And so, my fellow boomers, have you had this experience? A thought crosses your mind, like this one. I wonder if I should move to Mexico. And the next day, you pick up the New York Times, and there's a story about a flood of people your age moving to Mexico. It's as if being part of this giant, misshapen demographic bulge, there are no original thoughts. Anything you think will have been thought by a million others in your cohort and may even be a trend by the time you get to it. Have a hot flash? Count on it. The Times will run a story that week about the cultural impact of a jillion women all entering menopause at the same time. All that fierceness set loose in the world. And I can't believe I just said menopause in the pulpit. But that's also something that happens when you get older. You find yourself doing and saying things that you couldn't imagine just a few years earlier. But it's good to laugh at ourselves. Angels can fly because they take themselves lightly, said G.K. Chesterton, although I don't think he'd encountered the angel in the poem we read, grumpily longing for the old days, the days before the miracles of cell phones and the internet and everywhere connectivity without community. Well, more about that later. Right now I want to keep laughing because humor truly is one of the gifts of age. My father was a funny guy his whole life, making up silly songs that I still remember and will sing for you in private if you really want me to. Dad lived to the age of 75, suffering near the end with bladder cancer that forced him to carry a catheter bag with him everywhere in a satchel. One day I overheard him laughing on the phone with an old friend. "I've been retired 20 years, he was saying, and here I am at the end, strapped again to this goddamn briefcase." Well, my relationship with my father was fraught down through the years, but that day my heart filled with admiration. He had given me a glimpse of one of the ways to age gracefully. My mother never got to be old. As I hover on the brink of turning 70, I've outlived her by more than a decade. At my nephew's wedding in Colorado last week, my brother remarked that I look more like Mom every time he sees me. I knew what he meant. "How strange it is," I said, "to be seeing her face in my mirror now, when she never got to be this age." My brother said, "Well, you get to be this age for her." I often have that thought myself. So next week, I retire from professional ministry. I go from being minister for hire to minister in the world, or fool for hire to fool in the world. It's all the same thing, really, right, Carmen? To mark these occasions, I got my first and probably only tattoo. It's true. Thank you. It's a couple of ginkgo leaves and the words, "Only connect." The words on my arm are not about digital connectivity, but connecting to people face to face and heart to heart, and connecting to my deepest dreams, my authentic self, to my vocation as distinct from my profession. "No, no, there is no going back," the poet Wendell Berry wrote. "Less and less you are that possibility you were." But what new possibilities might there be? And I've been pondering this. I know at 70 or almost 70, I'm still a younger elder. I've been privileged to be surrounded by many in this congregation who have attained the luminosity that shines from you, from the elders. You've all taught me so much. In watching you, I can let go of any fear about growing older, because I see that you are so much more than some diminished version of your younger selves, as elders are too often portrayed in popular culture. And it's true that old age is a ceremony of losses. As the poet Donald Hall said, I don't mean to minimize the griefs that inevitably mount as the years add up. I also know that at this moment I have the privilege of immoderate good health and a measure of financial security, which is not the case for everyone, of course. But for many of us, and speaking generally, sociologists say that the happiest people on earth are women aged 65 to 79. I found that in a book by Mary Pfeiffer called Women Rowing North. And the human beings on the planet most practiced at being joyful are two men in their 80s who have experienced uncommon grief as well, Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama, whose conversations about how to cultivate joy are recorded in the aptly titled Book of Joy. A common theme in both these books is the wisdom that comes with age. There's a lot that happens that we can't control. We can't head off the ceremony of losses, but we can be in charge of how we respond to loss and to joy. Meet each day as it comes. There's another book that's capturing my imagination just now, one recently posted on Instagram by my daughter-in-law. I bought it immediately based on her recommendation, but probably would have grabbed it for the title alone, How to Do Nothing. It's not really about doing nothing, because reading is not nothing, of course. But it's about how to choose carefully what we might or should be doing at any given moment within an economic culture that works to steal and fracture our attention. In the introduction, the author, Jenny Odal, said she wrote it as a field guide to doing nothing as an act of political resistance to the attention economy. This writer's mission is to build up an image of doing nothing so it can stand as a bulwark against the productivity-obsessed environment in which we are willingly or not immersed. And this, she hopes, will help restore individuals who can then help restore communities, human and beyond. One of the questions I've had about myself as I've headed toward retirement is how to escape what Odal calls the tyranny of usefulness. Though the prospect of unstructured time that would come with retirement was immediately delicious, I worried. My work as a minister and a faithful fool was the main way I knew I was of use in the world. Would I feel useless if I didn't carry these roles? I know I'm not the only one who suffers from the tyranny of usefulness. Meg Whitaker Green of this congregation gave me permission to tell you about the note she has posted on her bathroom mirror as a reminder to herself. Meg, it says, I won't be needing your help today. Love, God. So if I'm doing nothing as an act of resistance, and if restoring myself leads to restoring communities, well, that's not useless. But I've always known this. What the worry really is about is constructing a sense of worth outside the social and professional identity that work in the world confers on an individual. I wonder if some of you who are retired have asked yourself these questions. Or if some of you are not yet retired, are thinking ahead and wondering about them too. We need to think about this stuff because we might all live to be 100. That's what the financial people tell us we should plan for, those of us fortunate enough to have had means to save for retirement. And it's an amazing privilege to reach a point where it's feasible to stop doing work for money. But it isn't money alone we need to save for our old age. To live a long and healthy life, we need to save and grow our social capital too. I was surprised to learn recently that the most important factors predicting longevity are not weight, exercise, or hypertension. It doesn't have a whole lot to do with how much you drink or whether you smoke. No, the top two factors predicting longevity have to do with your social interactions. Number two is whether you have a number of close personal relationships, be they family of origin or family of choice or a circle of friends. Now that didn't surprise me. What surprised me is that the number one predictor of longevity is something the sociologists call social integration, which basically boils down to how many people you talk to in a given day. Now that includes talking to your sister or your son on the phone, or your neighbor over the fence, or your best friend over lunch. And it also includes talking to the person who makes your coffee, or the one who brings your mail. Do you engage with these people in your life? Do you chat with the checker at the grocery store? Evidence is you'll live longer, healthier, and happier if you do. Susan Pinker, who revealed this scale of longevity factors in a TED Talk, has also written a book that explores the value of face-to-face conversations, many of them throughout the day. She called it the village factor. Finding a village can be challenging for elders who want to age at home and who may have health concerns that make it unfeasible to bop over to the corner cafe for a coffee and a chat with the barista. If that's you, let me say this. I am really glad you came to church. And if you're joining us on the live stream from home, I'm glad you're here too. Because for many of us, as we age, church can be the village that we need, or part of the village. This congregation does a good job, the best I've seen among all the churches I've served, at supporting one another through all the changes in a life. Whether it's the joyful stress of coming of age, marriage, and childbirth, the sorrows that come with loss and grief, or the changes of aging. And we want to get better at it. Really, we have to get better. Because that demographic bulge of rapidly aging generation is happening here too. Marty Vanderlaan and others of the lay chaplains have initiated conversations with the Society for Community Work and other leaders here about what we as a congregation might do to get ready to make sure we have the capacity to help one another. The lay chaplains are accumulating a wealth of experience with the good people of this congregation, accompanying families as they negotiate the balance between families' needs for elders to be safe and elders' needs for dignity and independence. Talk to the lay chaplains if you'd like to be part of that conversation. This work of care, of sustenance, of maintenance is some of the most important work a church can do. And I'm not trying to establish some kind of hierarchy, because when children are being locked in cages and separated from their families, raising our voices against these horrors is in the same category of tending and care. All of it work that is undervalued in a culture that elevates the measurables of productivity and attention grabs. Caring, tending, speaking out when we witness a lack of care, all of these are necessary, and all are acts of resistance. Less and less, you are that possibility you were, wrote Wendell Berry, the poet, ecologist, and farmer who incidentally turns 85 next week. Every day you have less reason not to give yourself away. This comes into sharper focus as I get older, as I allow myself more fully to appreciate how life is flying by and how very sweet life is, and how it can be a vocation for each of us to make it sweet for ourselves, for one another, and for everyone. Thank you, Reiko. That was amazing. And thank you, Mark, and all our musicians today. So once again today we will, after the benediction, we'll sing ourselves out. We'll gather in the courtyard and then proceed from there to the steps for our witness and our action. And now if comfortable doing so, please reach out and take the hand or touch the shoulder of someone near you. Mm-hmm. It is so sweet to be with you. It is so sweet to be together. Let us make it our vocation to keep the sweetness going for ourselves, for one another, and for everyone. Amen.
to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land